who will speak to you on how Australia has prepared. Mr. Menzies.
Fellow Australians, the calmness with which our nation has met the shifts and changes of the last anxious week has made a deep impression upon all of us. Your steadiness and cheerfulness have been of the utmost value, and they have enabled the government to carry out certain necessary and urgent measures with an entire absence of friction. Broadly, the European position, as I speak, is still in the balance. A state of acute tension continues, and everything may be said to depend upon the result of the discussions which are now proceeding between the principal powers. It is, however, encouraging to realize that time is being increasingly occupied by discussion, because discussion, if it can be conducted in a calm spirit and with a desire to examine grievances, is much more calculated to reduce the temperature than to increase it. A reduced temperature in Europe is of great importance. On the whole, therefore, I think I am justified in saying that since I last spoke to you, there has been some improvement, though the danger is still great and the need for a determined spirit still imperative. In the meantime, and while we are, so to speak, waiting for the verdict, I would like to tell you quite briefly of some of the steps that we as a government have been taking to ensure that Australia will, whatever comes, be prepared and alert. Immediately after I spoke to you last Friday night from Canberra, I returned to the Prime Minister's lodge and conferred with the Minister for Defence, who had been in constant touch with the Defence Committee and with Defence Headquarters, where consideration had been given to putting into operation certain preliminary steps under what we know as the War Book. That title, the War Book, may sound ominous, but in reality you would find it a reassuring document, because you would discover from it that for the first time in its history, Australia has so thoroughly prepared for eventualities that it has complete plans, fully documented, for taking, in their proper order and without confusion, all those steps, both preparatory and final, which would need to be taken through a threat of war or after the actual declaration of war. An enormous amount of work has gone into the preparation of the War Book, a great deal of it by officials who are sometimes foolishly criticized, but who have, as I have every reason to know, spared no effort for many months past in their desire to make Australia ready. As a result of my discussions with the Minister, I directed that certain steps should be taken. Executive Council meetings were called, and regulations drafted some months ago were put into operation. These regulations dealt with such matters as passports, control of aliens, and the transfer of ships and aircraft. Further, since one of the things to be guarded against is danger to certain vulnerable spots inside our own country, several protective measures were put in hand which involved extensive cooperation with the state governments and police authorities. On Monday morning, we instituted a form of exchange control so as to prevent the state of crisis from producing undesirable results in relation to our overseas financial position. Each of these matters was of a fairly drastic character, but I am sure that you will agree with me that at a time like this, it is the duty of your leaders to be wise before the event rather than after it. Now, just let me say a few words about what we have done in relation to our defence services. In the Navy, all ships in commission are in a state of readiness to take up any dispositions which may be necessary. Work upon ships in reserve is being expedited so as to shorten the time within which they can be ready to go to sea. at the request of the United Kingdom government, several merchant ships have been taken up for naval purposes, and similar action will be taken on our own account if it becomes desirable. Certain steps have been taken by the Naval Board to protect the mercantile marine, and in accordance with long-standing custom, merchant ships will have some armament mounted for their own defence against possible enemies. The Army, too, is prepared. Arrangements have been made for the manning of fixed coast and anti-aircraft defences, and as well as this, certain arrangements have been made for protecting the coast defences to the extent that is needed. The permanent garrison at Darwin is being supplemented by locally raised militia units. Defence establishments and places of distinct military importance, such as wireless stations, cable stations, and railway bridges, are being protected by military volunteer guards or by the state police. While the training of the militia force is continuing and, as you already know, is to be greatly intensified as the result of certain recent decisions by the government, a limited number of militia officers and other ranks has volunteered for full-time intelligence and administrative duties. The problem of communications, very important at a time of stress, is being actively dealt with by the Postmaster General's Department. The Royal Australian Air Force is in a very good state of preparation, the movement of squadrons to their operational stations having been completed, and the squadrons themselves having been placed at short call. The preparation of strategic landing grounds has been accelerated to provide for the transfer of squadrons to any area along the coast where they might be required to operate. Arrangements have been completed so that members of the active Citizen Air Force and of the RAAF Reserve could be called up for duty at short notice. This has involved a great deal of work in making available the necessary mobilization stores, equipment, and buildings, while dumps of petrol, oil, bombs, and ammunition are ready in strategic areas. All of this is, of course, in addition to the vast acceleration of work that has been going on for some time and which is leading to an increasing rate of production week by week of all sorts of materials of war. The workshops at Royal Australian Air Force stations are working overtime. The new Department of Supply, which I created when I came into office, is now in top gear. All munition factories have been placed on what is virtually a wartime basis. Leave has been cancelled, and employees who were actually on leave have been recalled. Production in multiple shifts has been stepped up to capacity in each establishment, and additions and extensions to plant are being hurried forward. You will recall that we announced some time ago a plan for the establishment of armament annexes in certain factories in order to supplement production from government works. Not all have yet been completed, but it has been decided to concentrate on those in the most advanced state. This means the diversion of some of the equipment originally intended for annexes designed to come into operation later on, but it will not affect the date of completion of the annex plan as a whole. We have taken steps also to ensure adequate stocks of raw material for both factories and annexes, while with the cooperation of the states and the companies concerned, we have constituted a Commonwealth Oil Board to give effect to plans previously prepared for the rationing and control of oil stocks and supplies of liquid fuel and lubricants in the event of war. In all these services, many particular steps have been taken, of which, naturally, I cannot publicly speak. But I have given you some examples of the kind of thing we have been doing, because I think you are entitled to know that while my advice to you has been to keep calm, I have not confused calmness with idleness. We, your servants, many thousands of us, have been hard at work, because we know that unremitting toil is at present one of the most effective guarantees of our security. Australia, like the mother country, desires peace and has worked and is working hard to preserve it. But if it is to be war, a war which we will neither seek nor provoke, then we must be prepared. I took this opportunity of saying something to you tonight so that you might realize that everything that can be done is being done, and that in consequence you may go about your ordinary daily activities with the quiet but resolute confidence that knowledge of these facts may help you to feel.